Hi everyone. If you've spent any time on social media in groups that talk about the conflict in the Middle East, the chances are you've seen this picture. And this is a picture of a proposed natural gas pipeline that the Saudis want to put through Syria, and this is why America is so involved. Now, the problem with this is, although it does have some bearing on why America is in the Middle East, it doesn't actually give the whole story. So what I'm going to try and do in this video is give you the whole story. Now, this picture actually would explain why Saudi Arabia are willing to pay for America to overthrow certain regimes in the Middle East, namely Syria. And if you don't believe me that Saudi Arabia have offered to pay in full for a regime change in Syria, then you've probably not watched much Jimmy Dore, because Jimmy Dore has showed this clip coming up quite often, and it's John Kerry talking to a commission in the US and pretty much admitting that Saudi Arabia have offered to pay for regime change. Take a look.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And the details on the offer and the proposal on the table, what are the figures that we're talking about?
Well, we don't know what action we're engaged in right now, but they've been quite significant. I mean, very significant. In fact, some of them have said that if the United States is prepared to go do the whole thing the way we've done it previously in other places, they'll carry that cost. That's how dedicated they are to this.
So there was John Kerry basically admitting Saudi Arabia have offered to pay for American military to go in and overthrow Assad. I'll leave a link to the full clip down there. He mentioned Syria specifically earlier on in that clip. So if it's not all about this natural gas pipeline, although that does go some ways to why, don't get me wrong, that America and the UK are involved over there. To understand exactly why, we need to go all the way back to 1933. Now, I like FDR, but he wasn't perfect. Japanese internment camps and all that. And one of the other things that he did in 1933 set the wheels in motion. I don't think he did it on purpose and he didn't realise what he was doing, but it set the wheels in motion for something that Nixon did later on that basically changed the way oil was bought in the Middle East. So I want to read you a little bit of this here. On June the 5th, 1933, the United States went off the gold standard, a monetary system in which currency is backed by gold, when Congress enacted a joint resolution nullifying the right of creditors to demand payment in gold. The United States had been on a gold standard since 1879, except for an embargo of gold exports during World War I, but bank failures during the Great Depression of the 1930s frightened the public into hoarding gold, making the policy untenable. Soon after taking office in March 1933, Roosevelt declared a nationwide bank moratorium in order to prevent a run on the banks by consumers lacking confidence in the economy. He also forbade banks to pay out gold or to export it. According to the Keynesian economic theory, one of the best ways to fight off an economic downturn is to inflate the monetary supply, and increasing the amount of gold held by the Federal Reserve would in turn increase its power to inflate the money supply. Facing similar pressures, Britain had dropped the gold standard in 1931, and Roosevelt had taken note. The bottom of that article, it says this, and it's important. The government held the $35 per ounce price until August the 15th, 1971, when President Richard Nixon announced that the United States would no longer convert dollars to gold at a fixed value, thus completely abandoning the gold standard. In 1974, President Gerald Ford then signed legislation that permitted Americans again to own gold bullion. So Keynesian economic theory is saying one of the best ways to fight off an economic downturn is to inflate the money supply, have more of it in circulation. And this is where the petrodollar comes in. How petrodollars affect the US dollar. After the collapse of the Bretton Woods gold standard in the early 1970s, the US struck a deal with Saudi Arabia, which is the largest exporter of oil in the Middle East, to standardize oil prices in dollar terms. Through this deal, the petrodollar system was born, along with a paradigm shift away from pegged exchange rates and gold-backed currencies to non-backed floating rate regimes. The petrodollar system elevated the US dollar to the world's reserve currency, and through this status, the US is able to enjoy persistent trade deficits and become a global economic hegemony. The petrodollar system also provides United States financial markets with a source of liquidity and foreign capital inflows through petrodollar recycling. However, before the effects of the petrodollars on the US dollar can be examined, a brief history lesson is in order. I won't go into detail in that. What I will say is this is at the bottom of that article as well. While it will not happen overnight, a drying up of recycled petrodollars would drain the liquidity of American capital markets, which will increase the borrowing cost for governments, companies and consumers as sources of money become scarce. The bottom line is, after the 1970s, the world switched from a gold standard and gave birth to the rise of petrodollars. These extra circulated dollars have helped elevate the US dollar in the world reserve currency. The petrodollar system also facilitates petrodollar recycling, which creates liquidity and demand for assets in the financial markets. So that is why the petrodollar is so important. That is why it's so important for America and the dollar to be used as the primary source of buying oil and trading in oil that comes from the Middle East. It's propping up the economy and it's keeping the US as the major currency in the world. Fast forward to year 2000. This is CNN. UN to let Iraq sell oil for euros, not dollars. Iraq starts selling their oil in euros and instead of dollars, and that obviously hits the US dollar. 2 years later, Iraq is invaded under the pretext of harbouring terrorists and 9/11, but we all know now those reasons were absolutely false. Looks like this was the real reason why, especially because that's not the only time it's happened. 11th of November 2011, Gaddafi's gold money plan would have devastated the dollar. So Gaddafi didn't just want to come off the dollar and use euro. He actually wanted to come off the dollar, not use euro at all, and actually use an African-based currency. I think it was called the dinar, if I remember correctly. And months later, he's overthrown. In 2009, in his capacity as head of the African Union, Libya's Muammar Gaddafi had proposed that the economically crippled continent adopt the gold dinar. Yes, I was right. Noted Lana Mercer in the August opinion piece for the World Net Daily. I do not know if Colonel Gaddafi continued to agitate for ditching the dollar and adopting the gold dinar, or if the agitator from Chicago got wind of Gaddafi's uncharacteristic sanity about things monetary. But if Arab and African nations had begun adopting a gold-backed currency, it would have had major repercussions for debt-laden Western governments that would be far more significant than the purported democratic uprisings sweeping the region this year. And it would have spelled big trouble for the elite who benefit from freshly counterfeited funny money. Had Gaddafi sparked a gold-driven monetary revolution, he would have done well for his own people and for the world at large, she concluded. A Gaddafi-driven gold revolution would have, however, imperiled the positions of central bankers and their political and media power brokers. Adding credence to the theory about why Gaddafi had been overthrown, as the New American reported in March, was the rebels' odd decision, not really odd if you actually look at it, to create a central bank and replace Gaddafi's state-owned monetary authority. So halfway through them overthrowing Gaddafi's government, they created a central bank to sell the oil in petrodollars. Starting to see a pattern here, aren't we? He was removed from power just a few months later. A few months after proposing coming off the petrodollar, moving towards this gold dinar, he gets invaded and overthrown. In 2006, Syria picks the euros over dollars. A few years later, Operation Timber Sycamore, funded by the US and I believe UK governments, armed these rebels to try and overthrow the Assad government. Russia has obviously come in and sort of saved that from happening, and now Syria has almost won that war. But still, it's really important to know that any country in the Middle East who is saying that they are coming off the petrodollar or indicates that they are coming off the dollar as the unit of currency to be used to trade oil, doesn't take long before the US military come in. or US-backed rebels come in to try and overthrow the government. There is a pattern here. And now we come to Iran. March the 1st, 2018, Iran clamps down on dollar trading in fresh attempt to bolster rial, which is their own currency. That was on March the 1st. 3 weeks later, Trump appoints John Bolton as the new National Security Advisor. Just 3 weeks later, John Bolton, who has said things like bomb, 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 bomb Iran, and wants war with Iran at any cost. He's been saying this for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, after Iran have said we don't want to trade in dollars anymore, he's appointed as National Security Advisor to Trump. These things are connected. Now, it's not just the Middle East. Venezuela accused of drug peddling after dropping US petrodollar trade scheme. Venezuela wanted to come off the petrodollar too. All of a sudden, they get accused of drug peddling, and the government is attempted to be overthrown through the rebels funded by the US, and with a CIA regime change thrown in there, no doubt as well, although I'm not 100% sure of that. That might be just my theory. It's not always about the dollar. It's not always about the petrodollar. Sometimes it's about the drugs. Lee Camp did a brilliant piece on this a few days ago on Redacted Tonight. I'll leave a link to that down there as well. It was extremely funny. It really was. You can see here in 2001, Afghanistan's opium cultivation, or poppy cultivation, which is what is used for opium, just goes through the floor in 2001. Why did that happen? Well, it happened because the Taliban were in control. The Taliban gained control of Afghanistan, and it's against their religious beliefs for any drugs to be produced. Next year or two, America go in, and all of a sudden, the poppy production goes through the roof. Now, this graph only goes up to 2016. In 2017, there was an 87% increase in opium production in Afghanistan. And here you can see a graph of just how the use of opioids in the United States has increased in that time. There is a connection there. I am 100% sure of. Opium production in Afghanistan now equates to 90% of all the use of heroin worldwide. I thought we were fighting a drug war, guys. I thought we were in a war against drugs. 18 years almost in Afghanistan. Now, the reason the American government and the UK government and all of the establishment and corporate media people parrot this line as well, and have been doing for months, the reason really we went into Syria and bombed Syria was because it was for a chemical attack. Now, there was no proof that Assad did this. It made no sense, as I've said in many videos, for Assad to use chemical weapons on his own people when he's basically won the war. Why would he do that, knowing that it would galvanise the rest of the world against him? Well, that's BS. It's 100% BS, as this shows. Israel accused of indiscriminate phosphorus use in Gaza. They've used this quite widely in Gaza. I saw a video not long ago of them using it in a residential area. If I can find it, I'll put that video up here. I'm not 100% sure I'll find it there. Human Rights Watch report claims Israel committed war crimes in its use of airburst white phosphorus artillery shells. Now, Israel will say that white phosphorus is used to actually mark territories for our troops. But as you can see from this picture, they use it in densely populated areas. White phosphorus is a chemical weapon. They use it for marking points on terrain, yes, but when it touches skin, it burns it to the bone. So why didn't the US and the UK bomb Israel every time this has happened? And it's happened multiple times. Why not? It wasn't just Israel, of course. Saudi Arabia have been using it in Yemen as well. Who's going to bomb them, as this headline says? It's not about chemical weapons. It's all about the dollars. And if it's not about the dollars, it's about the drugs. Hopefully that thing clears things up. Yes, these pipelines that are going through, that are proposed to be going through Syria, do have an effect on what is happening over there at the moment, and does have an effect on why Saudi Arabia so badly wants regime change in Syria. But this is not 100% why America wants regime change over there. It's all about the dollars. It's all about the petrodollar. I hope that clears things up. Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe if you like the video for more videos like this, and click that bell, otherwise you won't see, it won't pop up in your news feed. YouTube have admitted that. I want to say a big thank you to all my patrons and the people who send money to me on PayPal every now and then. I couldn't do this without you, and it really helps my channel grow and helps me get equipment and helps me pay for rent and light and food and that sort of thing. So I want a big thank you to all of you. I'm eternally grateful. I hope that clears things up, and until next time, peace and take care.